History buried their names, but not their legends. While textbooks celebrated famous generals, these black warriors stood on battlefields where empires rose and fell. They turned impossible odds into stunning victories. They saved nations that refused to honor them. Today, their stories explode from the shadows of forgotten history. Before we begin this journey through time, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about history. Stay until the end to learn about the warrior whose single decision altered the course of world events. The ink of history has always been selective. For centuries, scribes and scholars chronicled the deeds of conquerors and kings, but they wielded their pens like weapons, erasing entire legacies with deliberate strokes. Black warriors who changed the fate of nations vanished from the pages, their valor buried beneath layers of prejudice and fear. But erasure is not the same as extinction. These stories survived in whispers, in fragments, in the blood memory of descendants who refused to forget. Now those whispers become roars. The year is 1579. A ship cuts through the waters approaching Japan, carrying Jesuit missionaries, and among them, a figure who would shatter every expectation of feudal society. He stands nearly 6.5 feet tall, his dark skin glistening under the Asian sun. His name is Yasuke, and he is about to become something impossible: an African samurai. When Yasuke first walks through the streets of Kyoto, chaos erupts. People crush against one another for a glimpse of him. Some believe he is a divine being. Others think his skin has been painted with ink. So many gather that several are trampled in the frenzy. The commotion reaches the ears of Oda Nobunaga, the most powerful warlord in Japan. A man on the verge of unifying a fractured nation. Nobunaga demands to see this strange visitor. When they meet, the warlord does something unexpected. He orders his servants to scrub Yasuke's skin, convinced the color will wash away when it doesn't. Nobunaga's eyes light up with fascination rather than fear. What happens next defies every social boundary of the era. Nobunaga, impressed by Yasuke's strength and bearing, takes him into his service. But he doesn't make him a servant. He makes him a warrior, a samurai. Yasuke receives a sword, a house, and a stipend. He learns Japanese. He trains in the ways of the blade. The other samurai watch with a mixture of awe and resentment as this outsider rises through ranks that took them lifetimes to climb. But Yasuke proves himself again and again, his loyalty absolute, his courage unquestionable. For 3 years, Yasuke serves at Nobunaga's side, present in the room where the future of Japan is decided. He fights in battles and stands guard during crucial negotiations. He becomes more than a curiosity. He becomes trusted, valued, respected. Then comes June 21st, 1582. Nobunaga rests at Honnoji Temple in Kyoto. His guard reduced, his mind on political matters, dawn breaks with the sound of war drums. One of Nobunaga's own generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, has turned traitor. Thousands of soldiers surround the temple. Yasuke fights like a demon unleashed. His sword flashes in the morning light as wave after wave of attackers fall before him. He and a handful of loyal samurai hold the temple grounds, buying precious minutes. But they are hopelessly outnumbered. Inside, Nobunaga realizes the end has come. Rather than face capture, he commits seppuku, ritual suicide. The samurai's final act of honor, Yasuke continues fighting, now protecting Nobunaga's son and heir. They retreat to Nijo Castle, but the betrayal runs too deep. The castle falls. When Yasuke is finally captured, his enemies face a dilemma. He is samurai by rank, but not Japanese by birth. They decide he is not truly human, not responsible for his actions like a real warrior would be. They spare his life in an act of profound disrespect, then release him. After that moment, history loses Yasuke. He vanishes from the records, his fate unknown, but his impact remains undeniable. For a brief shining moment, an African warrior stood at the center of Japanese power, honored and feared, proving that excellence transcends every border drawn by prejudice. Across the ocean and 2 centuries forward, another warrior rises from chains. The year is 1791. The island of Saint-Domingue, known today as Haiti, produces more wealth than any colony in the Americas. Its sugar and coffee make France rich beyond measure, but that wealth flows from the blood of enslaved Africans worked to death in the fields. One of those enslaved men is 50 years old, literate, and carries inside him a brilliant military mind that has never been tested. His name is Toussaint Louverture, and he is about to orchestrate one of history's most stunning military achievements. When the uprising begins, it starts as a wildfire of rage and desperation. Plantations burn, masters flee, but rage alone cannot defeat empires. Toussaint sees this immediately. He begins organizing the chaos into something far more dangerous. A disciplined army. He teaches former slaves military tactics. He studies the strategies of European generals and improves upon them. He understands that to win freedom, they must not just fight, they must outthink their enemies. And Toussaint faces 3 enemies simultaneously. France, desperate to reclaim its jewel colony. Spain, seeking to expand its territory. Britain, eager to prevent revolutionary ideas from spreading. Each commands professional armies, trained soldiers, superior weapons. Toussaint commands former slaves armed with machetes and captured muskets. By every military calculation, he should lose quickly and catastrophically. Instead, he wins. Toussaint's genius lies in his understanding of the terrain and his enemy's weaknesses. He uses guerrilla warfare, striking fast and vanishing into the mountains. He forms temporary alliances, playing the European powers against each other. He joins Spain to fight France, then switches sides when it suits his ultimate goal, freedom for his people. He defeats British expeditionary forces so thoroughly that they withdraw, having lost thousands to both combat and disease. He outmaneuvers French generals sent to crush him. By 1801, Toussaint controls the entire island. He abolishes slavery, he creates a constitution. A former slave has built a nation. Then Napoleon Bonaparte, master of Europe, turns his attention to this upstart colony. Napoleon could not tolerate the existence of a free black republic. It threatens the entire system of slavery that funds European empires. He sends his brother-in-law, General Charles Leclerc, with 43,000 troops. It is one of the largest invasion forces France has ever assembled. Toussaint faces them with a fraction of that number. The war is brutal. Toussaint employs scorched earth tactics, burning cities rather than let them fall. He inflicts devastating casualties. Napoleon's army, accustomed to European warfare, crumbles in the tropical heat and against an enemy that refuses to fight by their rules. But Toussaint makes one fatal miscalculation. He agrees to negotiate. The French promise peace and respect. It is a lie. In June 1802, French officers invite Toussaint to a meeting. When he arrives, they arrest him. They chain the greatest military mind of the age and ship him to France, to a cold prison in the Jura Mountains. There, deliberately deprived of warmth and medical care, Toussaint Louverture dies alone in April 1803. He is 60 years old. His captors believe they have won. They are wrong. Toussaint's generals continue the fight. 6 months after his death, they defeat the French completely. On January 1st, 1804, Haiti declares independence, the first free black republic in the world, born from the military brilliance of a man who spent most of his life enslaved. But Toussaint's impact reaches further than Haiti. The war cost Napoleon so much in money, men, and morale that he abandons his dreams of an American empire. He sells the Louisiana Territory to the United States for pennies on the dollar. Toussaint Louverture's resistance literally redraws the map of North America. Yet his name barely appears in history books, his genius acknowledged only in whispers. Travel back further now, nearly 2,500 years, to a world of ancient empires and legendary kings. The year is 690 BCE. The Assyrian Empire dominates the known world, a war machine that has crushed every nation in its path. Their armies are massive, disciplined, equipped with iron weapons and siege engines that can break any city wall. They have conquered Babylon, subjugated Israel, and now they turn their hungry eyes toward Egypt, the cradle of civilization itself. Egypt's survival depends on an unexpected defender, a black pharaoh from the kingdom of Kush, far to the south. His name is Taharka, and he will prove that African military genius existed millennia before the modern world. Taharka ascends to the throne of both Kush and Egypt at age 32, inheriting a civilization under existential threat. The Assyrians consider Egypt a prize that will cement their status as the world's undisputed superpower. Their king, Esarhaddon, leads the invasion personally. His army numbers in the tens of thousands, supported by cavalry and chariots, engineers and archers. Standard military wisdom says Egypt will fall quickly. Taharka thinks differently. He mobilizes Egypt's resources with stunning efficiency. He reinforces border fortifications. He trains new military units using both traditional Egyptian and Kushite tactics. He understands that the Assyrians expect a static defense, armies meeting on open ground where numbers and equipment decide the outcome instead. Taharka employs flexible strategies, harassment campaigns, strategic retreats that extend Assyrian supply lines to the breaking point. When the Assyrians advance, they find themselves fighting an enemy that refuses to be pinned down, that strikes from unexpected angles, that turns the desert itself into a weapon. The first major invasion in 674 BCE ends in Assyrian retreat, an outcome that shocks the ancient world. But the Assyrians return, and Taharka faces them again and again. The conflict stretches over years, a grinding test of will and resources. Taharka's most famous intervention comes when he allies with the kingdom of Judah against Assyrian aggression. The Assyrian army besieges Jerusalem under King Sennacherib. The city seems doomed. Then Taharka marches north with reinforcements. What happens next becomes legend, recorded in multiple ancient sources, including the Bible. The Assyrian army suddenly withdraws in chaos. Ancient texts attribute it to divine intervention, an angel of death sweeping through the camp. Modern scholars suggest plague or some other catastrophe, but the strategic reality is clear. Taharka's intervention saves Jerusalem and demonstrates that the Assyrian war machine can be stopped. Taharka rules for 26 years, presiding over a cultural renaissance. He builds monuments, restores temples, and keeps Egypt independent during one of history's most dangerous periods. Yet over the centuries, his legacy fades. Later historians, uncomfortable with a black African pharaoh defending classical civilization, diminish his achievements or attribute them to others. The narrative becomes distorted, whitewashed in both literal and figurative terms. Only in recent decades have scholars begun properly acknowledging the 25th dynasty, the black pharaohs of Kush who ruled Egypt and stood as shields against imperial conquest. Now leap forward to the 20th century, to the war that was supposed to end all wars. In 1917, America enters World War I. Black men volunteer in droves, eager to prove their patriotism to serve their country. They are met with suspicion and segregation. The United States Army doesn't want black combat soldiers. Military leadership believes they lack the courage and intelligence for real warfare. So, they assign most black troops to labor battalions, digging trenches and hauling supplies while white soldiers do the fighting. But one unit refuses to be sidelined. The 369th Infantry Regiment, composed entirely of black soldiers from Harlem and led by mostly white officers, trains at Camp Wadsworth in South Carolina. They endure racism from white soldiers and locals alike. When they ship to France, American command doesn't want them. General John Pershing, leading American forces, essentially gives them away. He assigns the 369 to the French army. The French, decimated by years of brutal warfare and desperate for reinforcements, welcome them. More importantly, the French treat them as equals. The 369th receives French weapons, French uniforms, and French respect. They integrate into French units and head to the front lines. There they discover something the American Army tried to deny them: their own excellence. The 369th enters combat in April 1918 and doesn't leave until the armistice in November. 191 consecutive days in the trenches, longer than any other American unit. They fight in the Champagne-Marne offensive and the Meuse-Argonne offensive, some of the war's bloodiest battles. They never lose a trench. They never lose a man to capture. They never retreat. The French call them hell fighters, and the Germans learn to fear their sector of the line. Individual acts of heroism emerge from the hell of trench warfare. Private Henry Johnson is on guard duty when a German raiding party attacks with grenades. Wounded multiple times, his rifle jammed, Johnson fights hand-to-hand with his bolo knife. He suffers 21 wounds but saves his fellow soldier and kills at least 4 German soldiers. The French award him the Croix de Guerre with Star, their highest military honor. The American Army gives him nothing during his lifetime. When the war ends, the 369th marches home as the most decorated American unit. They parade up Fifth Avenue in New York City, thousands cheering, celebrating their valor. Then they take off their uniforms and return to a segregated society that denies them basic rights. The same country they bled for relegates them to second-class citizenship. Many receive no veterans' benefits. Their heroism is acknowledged briefly, then systematically forgotten, buried under the narrative that white soldiers won the war while black soldiers played supporting roles. But the Harlem Hellfighters planted seeds. They proved definitively and undeniably that black soldiers could not just fight, but excel. Their legacy feeds into the eventual desegregation of the American military and fuels the civil rights movement. They showed the world what America tried to hide, that courage and ability have no color. 4 warriors, spanning continents and millennia. Yasuke, the African samurai who reached the highest ranks of Japanese society. Toussaint Louverture, the enslaved man who became a military genius and reshaped the Western Hemisphere. Taharqa, the Black Pharaoh who defended civilization itself against the ancient world's superpower. The Harlem Hellfighters, who fought longer and harder than any American unit, only to come home to the country they saved, treating them as less than human. These stories are not anomalies. They are glimpses of a hidden truth. History didn't forget these warriors. History actively erased them, buried them, rewrote their achievements to exclude or diminish their contributions, because acknowledging their excellence meant confronting uncomfortable truths about race, power, and the artificial hierarchies that justified slavery, colonialism, and oppression. But erasure is not permanent. These names, these deeds, these moments of extraordinary courage and brilliance survive. They demand to be remembered, to be taught, to be celebrated. Every time someone learns about Yasuke or Toussaint, about Taharqa or the 369th, the historical record becomes a little more honest. The full picture of human achievement comes a little more into focus. If these stories moved you, if they made you angry at what was hidden or inspired by what was accomplished, then share this video. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more hidden history that deserves to be told. Comment below with which warrior inspired you most. These legacies belong to all of us, and it's our responsibility to carry them forward. Their names were buried beneath centuries of silence, but their impact echoes through time. The battles they won, the nations they saved, the barriers they shattered. These things cannot be erased. They changed history. Now it's time history acknowledged them. Remember their names. Tell their stories. Make sure the next generation knows that greatness has always worn every shade of humanity.